when you are the market leader, you have a certain degree of responsibility. You cannot afford to shrug your shoulders and say, I don't really care. Just like you hold a doctor accountable, you have to hold these people accountable because the entire learning of the next generation is in their hands. And the problem is that instead of using edutech cleverly, and there are lots of great examples of people who've done this, and Salman Khan with Khan Academy is a great example of putting it to good use. This is a great example of putting it to bad use, which means you're now so focused on fundraising. You're so focused on gratifying your investors. You're so focused on getting your IPO. You're so focused on getting your revenue numbers that this rot starts from the top and then it goes all the way down.
I'll give a quick introduction of Dr. Anirudh Malpani, who's the guest for this podcast today. So, Dr. Malpani is an IVF specialist. He is an active angel investor. He does a lot of philanthropy work, especially in the education space. And he was very popular on LinkedIn and used to add immense value on topics like education, startup, and healthcare. Actually, there was this time, you might not believe this, and I'm not saying it because you are here. I genuinely used to open LinkedIn just to read few of your posts. So I don't know if you remember this, but I wrote to you in 2017. I wanted to get my first set of exposure in startups, and I wrote to you and you said that why don't you work at Multibhashi, which is one of your portfolio companies. And that's so basically you kickstarted my professional journey in a way. So it's an honor to have you on this podcast and the first guest here. So really excited to talk to you about multiple different things. I'll just quickly introduce this podcast as well. So the intention of the podcast, the intention here is to spread awareness around education and problems which are faced by stakeholders in the education, like students, parents, teachers, etc., and also to create a learning resource for all the stakeholders. So yeah, why don't you kickstart the conversation?
Yeah, so without too much ado, I'll just dive right into the first question. So I just wanted to begin with something many of your followers might have some context about. And you've been speaking very actively against the malpractices at White Hat Junior and Byju's, and were expressing your views on the same on LinkedIn, who ended up permanently banning your profile without any appropriate.
Hopefully not permanently. We've sued them in Mumbai High Court. There's a this thing, and we're not just fighting for my rights. We're fighting for the rights of all Indian citizens. And I know that's a slightly bit of a tangent, but it's interesting. I didn't join LinkedIn with the intention of suing LinkedIn. I'm just saying, life takes you in so many different directions and you never know what's going to happen. But you learn a lot of interesting things during the process. What's interesting is LinkedIn kicked me out. And my objection is they did not follow due process. And effectively, they're acting like bullies. And of course, pretty much Byju's twists their arm because Byju's such a big advertiser and such a big source of revenue on LinkedIn that if Baiju tells them dance, they're going to say, how high do you want me to jump? And that bothers me a little bit because this is a multinational corporation. It's a US company. And they're saying, if you have any grouse, you come to USA and sue us, which I think is ridiculous. If I have a problem, I'm an Indian citizen, you're charging me fees, I'm paying Indian rupees, I should be allowed the privilege to be able to sue you in India. It's still not, yeah. So the issue is still live. And if I win, you should be happy here because then that will give you the right to be able to say what you want on LinkedIn or any other social media platform as an Indian citizen without getting worried that some corporate bully is going to censor you or block your account because effectively now everyone is so scared to speak up. And I don't think that's healthy at all.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we live in a free country. Freedom of speech is a part of our constitutional rights, and it's very, very important to exercise those.
So the interesting thing is the government of India is answerable to you, but LinkedIn is not answerable to you. Can you imagine that? And they actually say this when they reply to you when you send them a legal notice, which again is one of those things which makes my blood boil. Lots of things make my blood boil, but this is definitely one of them. I don't like being bullied. I believe in citizenship. I believe that people have a right to speak up, and they should speak up. And this used to be a common problem here. People would ask, what do you care about Byju's? What difference is it going to make to you? You're a doctor, you're an investor. Why are you talking about Byju's? And my kids have grown up. And my point is, instead of asking me why I'm speaking up against Byju's and White Hat Junior, my question is, why aren't you guys speaking up about White Hat Junior and Byju's? Because the amount of damage these guys are causing to the future generation, this is our human capital for the rest of our country for the next 20 to 30 years. And if we keep quiet and we allow them to be exploited, where you put profits over purpose, that's going to be bad for everyone. And that's effectively what's happened. And they've become such huge giants that they've sucked up all the funding, they've sucked up all the innovation in the tech space as far as edutech in inverted commas is concerned, which means everyone is now, copying them and doing all the mis-selling and all the malpractices which Byju's has mastered.
And this, I think, segues really, really well into the question we really wanted to ask, which is what is so wrong with White Hat Junior and Byju's, which has since also acquired White Hat Junior.
You're
And
only
other,
giving me 30 minutes. I don't know where I'm never going to be end, but let's break it up. Fair, because you're absolutely right. A lot of people say, but that's the job of a salesman. The job of a salesman is to meet his targets, get his revenue, and everyone does it. Banks do it, and Fair and Lovely Cream makes all these kind of promises, which obviously no one's going to be able to fulfill. And it's up to parents to decide what to do and what not to do, and why you're picking on Byju's. So those are some of the commonest criticisms I've received. And my point is, when you are the market leader, you have a certain degree of responsibility. You cannot afford to shrug your shoulders and say, I don't really care. Just like you hold a doctor accountable, you have to hold these people accountable, because the entire learning of the next generation is in their hands. And the problem is that instead of using edutech cleverly, and there are lots of great examples of people who've done this, and Salman Khan with Khan Academy is a great example of putting it to good use. This is a great example of putting it to bad use, which means you're now so focused on fundraising. You're so focused on gratifying your investors. You're so focused on getting your IPO. You're so focused on getting your revenue numbers that this rot starts from the top and then it goes all the way down, which means the CEO sets the numbers based on what the board says. I'm an angel investor. I'm on the board of companies, so I know how these things work. Then it gets filtered down, which means it's the guy who's at the cutting edge, the salesman, whose job effectively then becomes to missell, because there is absolutely no way he's going to be able to meet his targets if he sells ethically. I'm a big believer in ethical sales, and ethical sales is when you're adding value to the customer's life. That's the right way of doing it. Whereas here you're making all these tall promises, and it's become everyone knows how this works. So for example, they'll talk to you very sweetly. Your kid is so bright. We'll sign you up for this free 1 hour call where their only job is, we never met anyone so bright. And because it's so bright, we're going to give you a 50% off and there's a special scholarship. Then they harass you and harangue you with calls and SMSs and, oh, you haven't signed up yet and your neighbor has done this. So they've effectively institutionalized it. And the job of the salesman is not to add value to the student's life. The job of the salesman is to meet his targets, because bichara papi pete hai salesman ka. This is his first job. He's just graduated. They're not called salesmen. They're called BDAs, or business development executives. And then if he doesn't meet his targets, he loses his job. And Byju's thrives on that. They're very happy to hire in thousands. They're very happy to fire these guys in thousands. So even if you look, their churn is enormous, because no one's really caring about what are we doing to put our students first. It's just purely become a numbers-driven game. And they make all kinds of promises. Oh, if you're not satisfied, we'll allow you to cancel. So, okay, that's risk-free. And then when you try to cancel, your so-called mentor will not pick up the phone don't work, the mobile switched off, he'll pass you on to 50 different people, so you can't do anything. And the worst thing is, they take your signatures on financial forms, which then go to a financial intermediary, which means this poor parent is now on the hook. It's educational debt, which he then has to do monthly payments and installations. And these are not people like you or me here. These are drivers. These are, washermen, whatever else, people who don't understand what they're going in for, who know that it's important that the kids get educated, but they don't understand what alternatives are available which are free. They don't understand why this is so bad. They're still using outdated technology with SD cards. There's just so many things. So I think it's the work culture, it's the mis-selling, it's not being responsive to consumer complaints, and it's basically putting all of edutech, which could actually have been, I'm sure they didn't start off with that intent. I still believe people have good intentions at heart, but they've allowed it to deteriorate, and it's become such a mess now that it just breaks my heart. This could have been a force for doing so much good, and instead of doing that, it's now become a force for doing so much evil. Because the moment White Hat Junior started all those advertising campaigns with, we need to teach your 6-year-old how to code because he gets a head start, all these 50 other startups, they started doing exactly the same thing. And if White Hat Junior can do it and get away with it and create fictitious kids, imaginary kids, and put them in ads, and he's earning 15 crores per year in Google, and they just became bolder and bolder because no one was calling them up, no one was holding them accountable and answerable. So they were getting away with anything they wanted. And if White Hat Juniors, the leader, can do it, then why can't we? So everyone started getting onto the train. It just became so institutionalized and such a mess, which means the good edutech startups or the good guys in the system didn't get a chance at all because there was so much mis-selling that their entire voice got diluted. And it pretty much became, this is the standard way to do it. If everyone else is doing it, what's wrong if we do it? It's very easy to justify some of this stuff.
I think all that makes sense. One of the reasons why I also think that Byju's and similar such companies are so successful is because we as a society are convinced that there's just one way of doing things. There's just one predefined path that mandates you to score a lot on all of these paper credentials, and the higher marks you score, the successful the student is. And so Byju's essentially, I think, taps on this fear that people have of being left behind in the race, and for the social validation that they get. So and that often leads to well-intended stakeholders ending up taking misguided action. So two questions here. One, what steps can we take to fix the issue of single track thinking around education? And second, how can we bridge the gap between intention and action when it comes to education?
I think great questions. And this used to be a common criticism. People would say, oh, it's very easy for you, Dr. Malpani, to criticize. But tell us what you're doing. Where is the alternative? And the reality is there are many alternatives. And this is, these are books which have been written over the last 50 years, whether it's Ivan Illich about deschooling society, whether it's John Holt about how schools fail and how children fail. So I think there is a long tradition. The part of the problem is all these systems have been so institutionalized for so many years that we forget to look back and ask ourselves, when Indian culture was at its zenith, you had gurukuls. It's only when the British came and ruled you that you started having schools. And the purpose of the schools, as Macaulay very clearly pointed out, is to create babus and clerks to run the government for the Britishers, which means you had 5,000 Britishers ruling a country of so many millions of people. And the reason they could get away with it is because that's what they actually did. They ruined your existing culture and they institutionalized this. So this became your good. And I think perhaps that was fine at that time. But what breaks my heart is that we as parents have become so used to being schooled in a particular way that we fail to realize that what worked for us, I don't even know whether it worked. I think all of us managed to do what we're doing in spite of school, in spite of the brain damage which school inflicted on us. And it's only in retrospect that we realize how much that damage was. So there are lots of these success stories. And I think the problem is that none of these get highlighted for multiple reasons. For one thing, for example, whether you look at unschoolers, whether you look at homeschoolers, they don't care about all these paper credentials or whatever else. So they're not going out publicizing, unlike, let's say, Akash Institute, which every time one of the Akash Institute kids gets into IIT or scores rank, they'll plaster Times of India front page, which happens to be an investor in Byju's, so they can run the ads for free with, hey, our kids came first. And this is exactly how people get so brainwashed, partly because that's what we were exposed to, and partly because of all this advertising blitz that we fail to realize that we are actually doing a major disservice to our kids. we're telling them to color between the lines. We're telling them to fill in all those MCQs, which is completely disconnected from real life. So you're forcing them to sit in a classroom, which was appropriate maybe 100 years ago. Nothing of that has changed at all. And today, the way you order food has changed, the way you order a cab has changed. You talk about disruption, and you've disrupted everything else, whether it's hospitality with Airbnbs, whether it's transport with Uber, whether it's food delivery, Zomato. But your education space is still stuck in what it was 100 years ago. You could get a school teacher from 100 years ago and put them in a school today, and nothing would have changed. The syllabus is practically the same. Maybe some of it has changed a little bit, I hope. But, everything else. And I think that's something we need to be ashamed about, that we're forcing our kids. We're not making them future ready. And the reality is the future is going to be so different from what it is today. The pace of change is going to be so accurate. So the only thing we can tell our kids is all we can do is equip you for the future by teaching you how to learn for yourself. We will teach you how to think critically. We want you to be good citizens. We don't want you to be taken up by fake news. We need you to be able to differentiate between reliable websites, unreliable websites. We need you to create a personal brand for yourself. And you guys have so many advantages here. You're digital natives. And, for me, I'm still a digital dinosaur. I still have to do one finger typing. There's so many problems. You guys should be taking advantage of the fact all of you should be having your own websites. There are so many strengths which Indian students have. And unfortunately, instead of leveraging those strengths, you're just blindly following the same path which was set by everyone else. I don't know whether you're following the Netflix thing about the Ivy League scandal, where all these Hollywood stars and stuff paid so much money just to get their kids into Stanford. And I think all that is ridiculous. After 5 years, who cares which college you came from or which? And at some point, honestly, Google doesn't care anymore. They don't even look at your transcripts anymore. And let's be honest, what Google does today, the rest of the world is going to do 10 years from now. So really, you should be putting up your digital portfolio instead of going to college or school or anywhere else. And at some point, your digital portfolio is going to be a living testimony. That is your resume. That is your CV. And that's what people are going to look for. And if you can show me that, hey, I run a podcast, this is what I've created, this is how many crowdsourcing campaigns, this is the start, this is what I do as a freelancer, this is how much I hustle. That's going to be so much more valuable to a future if you choose to work for an employer, a job, or you choose to start up for yourself. I think you should go to college to have fun here. I'm not disputing that. But I think there are better ways of having more fun, honestly. I still believe that rather than sitting in a class, because effectively it's still the same old model. And typically I can tell you straight away what will happen. You will bunk half your classes. The other half you will sit in the bank, have fun, which is good for you. I'm not disputing that. I think what's happened with colleges, it's socially sanctioned fun. Why do you need social permission from anyone else? You're grown up now. So there are alternatives. So what people are actually suggesting is, if you want the college experience, don't sign up. So go stay in Boston for 6 months if that's what you want. And you can attend all the classes. No one is really stopping you from doing that. Why do you want to pay those $10,000 or $100, $1,000, whatever those fees are? So you can party as much as you like. You can take as much advantage as you like without having to pay the stupid fees. And if you just wanted to attend the lectures, you could easily do that online more efficiently. And your parents would be grateful. So you should tell them, you know what, I'm saving you so much money. So why don't you just put the money into my bank account and let me fend for myself?
I think college is more, it's socially sanctioned fun, yes. But currently, I think you put it across very accurately, that we live in an age where there is a particular path that you need to take in order to attain some sort of societal validation or some sort of standing of your own. And people have a lot of opinions in general of what is right and what is wrong, and college just happens to be one of those things that is expected of you, or that is the correct way to go about things. So the way I'm looking at it currently is that if I'm going to be doing it, I might as well do it on my own terms. And that's where we are at currently.
Kind of hard to do it on your own terms when your college professor tells you, okay, class starts at 9 o'clock, whether you feel like attending or not. And you need to hand in these assignments, and these assignments are going to get graded on a curve. which means your classmate is in competition with you rather than cooperation. But that's fine. I'm not trying to brainwash you here. Whatever works for you is fine. I think you're smart enough that I don't think it'll cause irreparable damage and you'll most certainly manage to get back again. So that's okay. My limited point is that there are far better solutions. And I'm not just a criticizer. I'm saying a lot of these models, what I call positive deviance or bright sparks, have already been proven. Now, let's be honest. If you need to become a doctor here, I don't think you have a choice because no one's going to allow you to practice medicine without that degree. So perhaps that's true. Perhaps if you wanted to become a lawyer and you needed that particular degree. So I think for certain things, perhaps it still makes sense. But for a lot of the other stuff, I'm honestly not convinced. Or at least I think there are alternative routes to that. And I think you will increasingly start seeing a lot of these success stories. And then the reason you will start seeing them is because these guys are going to become social media platform heroes. See, what's happened so far is whatever you saw in the news or the media was pretty much controlled by the Times of India or whichever news channel it was. So they would decide what to feature and not to feature. Today, thanks to social media, these guys, and at some point here, you're going to be spending 4 years in college. And your colleague is then going to have 1 million followers on Instagram or on YouTube or whatever else, which they're going to be very easily able to convert into job opportunities, into income, into so many other things. And then you're going to say, oh, what did I do sitting 4 years in college? But hopefully you'll drop out. Sorry, I hope your parents aren't hearing this. What are you doing to my daughter? Why are you instigating her to do this? I'm just saying there are better solutions. That's all. But whatever you do, all I'm saying is have fun, enjoy it. Keep your happiness first. If you're happy, I think everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, I think that's the plan.
Yeah, but colleges aren't designed to keep individual students happy. Remember that. Just like hospitals aren't designed to keep patients happy, hospitals are designed to keep doctors like me happy. So everything in a hospital revolves around us. Patients wait patiently, Doctor Saab, humko theek karo. Relatives wait patiently, Doctor Saab kab aane wale hai? All the nurses dutifully follow in your footsteps. So, everyone puts you on a pedestal. That kind of goes to your head a little bit. And I think the same thing happens. And college professors, they get tenure not based on their teaching skills, but based on the research they do. So they'll have all these brand name professors who won't take a single lecture. Or even if they take a lecture, they're so boring and they can't articulate and they mumble their words. And no one's ever taught them how to teach because that's just a secondary thing. So effectively, a lot of this thing, I think, gets oversold, but that's all part of the hype.
Yeah, I think not all people who are good in their field end up becoming good teachers. Becoming a good teacher is a skill in itself. And I think going to school has taught me that much, that not everybody who's exceptionally good at physics will make the best physics teacher, and the sort of teacher you have influences how interested you are in that subject. That's something I've had to learn.
Full mark. So I always tell students, if you don't understand something the teacher is saying, it's the fault of the teacher. They're not explaining well. I tell all my patients that. If you don't understand something I'm saying, it's my fault. Maybe I'm using too much jargon. Maybe I'm talking too fast, as a result of which you can't understand anything I'm saying because you're so nervous and you can't, whatever it may be. So the onus is on me. The burden is on me as a doctor to make sure my patients understand. And I think similarly, it's that way. So I think unless hospitals learn to put patients first, and they all pay lip service to it, but they don't do it in real life, let's be honest. And I think that's the same thing for college. The trouble with institutions here is the purpose of an institution is to perpetuate itself. And that's exactly what all these guys do, whether it's a politician who's funding the institution, who will then pass the rules that way, or whether it's the administrators. And effectively what will happen is the administrators multiply, so if you look at that same college and you looked at the number of administrators they had 30 years ago, the administrators have, they multiply like rabbits. So they increase the budgets for their offices and they increase the size of their offices and all that good stuff, but they don't do much for the students.
Which gives us a nice segue once again into the next question I had for you. So I'll just come back a little bit to ed tech because that's where we started our conversation with. And so I just wanted to ask, do you think any of the newer edtech companies or models such as, say, Lambda Schools or websites like Brilliant can help sort of constructively guide students? And if they do, then what makes them so effective where our traditional conventions fail?
I think great points. And I think because they're actually putting their students first. So if you look at Lambda School, for example, it's an income sharing agreement. So it's all based on the student's success. Lambda only makes the money when the student succeeds. If the student doesn't succeed, Lambda doesn't make any money. So Lambda has to be very careful about how they craft their courses, how they make sure they motivate students, how students remain motivated. The point is interests are aligned. And this is exactly the same problem with the financial services industry here, that the share brokers' interests are not aligned with the investors' interest. The share broker makes money when he churns your portfolio. You don't make the money when that happens. That's exactly, and what I'm trying to say is it's not unique to the education sector. It's across the board. It's the principal agent problem. And unless you align those interests, and there are so many success stories, like you said, and I think it's great. People have tried. And for example, Khan Academy, they've chosen a different model. Can we do it along the philanthropic route, or whether it's, let's say, Acton Academy, where they're saying that we need to put students first by helping them to start single room schools. So you need to identify parents who are willing to think out of the box and saying, hey, we will help you to become great parents by helping your kids to succeed. And I think there is enough resource material and content available out there. And whatever you may say, you can never teach someone else. People need to learn for themselves. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say the student needs to take the responsibility. Part of the problem is parents don't respect students enough. Isn't that true here? Your mom always feels that she knows more about what's good for Hia than Hia does. Isn't that true?
I think
I'm
I
sure.
come from a very fortunate family where,
But my daughters are adults, but I'm sure at some point I'm always going to say, "Are you sure you're?" Maybe I'll be a little more polite and tactful, perhaps. Are you sure you're doing the right thing, Natasha? Or maybe you shouldn't be doing this. But my limited point is, at some point you say, "हाँ, अभी मेरे बाल पक गए हैं. तू तो कल की छोकरी है. तू क्या समझती है? I've seen the world." And again, no one wants to rock the boat, but I think part of it is, whereas the other way of it is, we will let the student decide for themselves. We will put the student first, which is why some of our initiatives, we're creating some of this stuff. So, for example, what we decided was we don't want to create content. Our point is that just like some technology is a commodity, some content is a commodity. There's enough great content available on YouTube. What can we do to expose that content so it becomes student friendly? So instead of trying to create content which is extremely expensive, we said, let's look at the YouTube videos and create a platform which is then student friendly, which then removes all the entertainment piece, which helps students to track progress, which helps students to create a portfolio, which helps students to be able to share what they've done and not done with parents and teachers and anyone who's as interested, which helps students to create their own learning journeys. So some students will do it themselves. Some students will want their hand held. So we've allowed things like video annotation and video bookmarking and stuff like that. And I think there are just so many of these initiatives. And the great thing is a lot of these are open source initiatives. And that's what I love about what Cato is doing, quite frankly, is that we need to put all these little bits and bobs together. And the great thing is it's not expensive to do any of this stuff. And I think that's the remarkable thing about technology, that literally with a very small amount of money, you can frugally do a lot of stuff. So everything we've done, whether it's Learn with Comics, whether it's beyond exams, we've done with very, very low budgets. And our hypothesis is if we kickstart this and do this well, there is no shortage of money, there is no shortage of human capital and social capital and goodwill, that we can get a lot of people together on this platform. And that's what, but at some point, here you can say, doctor, you're still talking, show us success. And I still can't do that. So hopefully, if we have this conversation, perhaps after 1 year, I'll be able to give you more tangible metrics. I'll be able to say, these are the number of people whom we've been able to make a difference to. It's still early days to do that, but I'm the eternal optimist. I am not cynical. I am not skeptical. I honestly think that the future generation has a lot of potential. If I didn't think that, I would never be an angel investor. I wouldn't invest in young entrepreneurs because I honestly believe that they have the opportunity to change the world. Our generation has messed up for whatever reason, and I think it's possible to do a better job. And that's what we want to catalyze. That's what we want to give them the tools with. The tech tools are available online. Maybe a little bit of money, maybe a little bit of why don't you explore these things? Why don't you try out some of these things and then see what works and see what sticks?
Great. I think that's a um an awesome take, and every other initiative that you are involved with. I went through all of those, and I really loved what you are doing there. And there's so much more that we could talk in this podcast, but we have run out of time. So we'll have to wrap it up here. But thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and doing this, Doctor. And I really love chatting with you. Thank you so much.
No, no,
Yeah,
but
thank you. It
I,
was a pleasure.
I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate that. But I think honestly, we need to let students know that the future of the world is in your hands. That I think part of the problem is the schooling system infantilizes kids. You need to ask for permission. Can I go to the bathroom? Can you imagine? And I think even with colleges and stuff like that, then why didn't you attend and stuff? We shouldn't be doing that. I mean, I think we should treat you like grown-ups. And I think if we do that, and that's the philosophy we're coming from, you want to learn this? Great. Don't want to learn it? Great. You'll figure it out for yourself. Because the right learning is self-learning, it's peer-to-peer learning, it's just-in-time learning. So we will show you how to figure stuff out for yourself. Then you're on your own.
Uh, I mean, one of the reasons why I also left the formal education was because they did not give me enough freedom to do what I really wanted to do. So that makes complete sense.
The loss is theirs, no? No, thank you so much. And I'm if anyone wants to send me an email or wants to discuss this, I've been kicked out of LinkedIn. Hopefully, I'll be back at some point. But I'm fairly active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Malpani. I'm very happy to have conversations with people. All we say is that don't assume you're powerless and helpless. And I think that's the big difference as compared to when I was a student. Because India was a poor country. You looked up to the West. You always felt sorry for yourself. So effectively, we were second-class citizens in a second-class country. I don't think that's
Totally.
true anymore. I'm not saying that there isn't a lot of scope as far as development goes. But honestly, people like you, Rutvej, or here, you're first-class citizens. And there is people like you need to make this a first-class country.
Definitely. We are working on that, and we'll definitely do that.
Great.
Great. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All
so
right. Thanks.